Business and life is an adventure. Don't be an NPC. Don't be a non-playable character. Grab your sword and your shield, go out there and explore and have fun. So Neuro-spicy it's self-coined. People who are on the neurodivergent spectrum, it has so many connotations to it. And so they say they're neuro-spicy because it's all just a little bit of extra flavor that they've put onto how they approach the world, which I think is good. And so all of my programming is actually geared for that. Because, we always say, that you're thinking inside the box, or let's think outside the box. And I'm like, who created the box? I mean, box sounds so rigid. To me, I like to tell people rules are more like a deflated balloon that you found yourself inside. The rules are still there. You just got to push and pull until it starts to form fit you. We're not cogs in a machine. We are not machines ourselves. We're people.
Welcome to the People Fuss podcast. I'm Carrie Prince.
And I'm still Doug Daniels.
And we are here to discuss
the fuss
about people. Unpacking the stories and headlines around human connection and disconnection in life,
in love,
and in leadership.
That's right. Carrie Prince.
Yes.
What are we fussing about today?
Well, today the fuss is about business and creative.
Two things.
We always talk about this left brain, right brain thing. I mean, that's been around since I was a kid, that, things that are more like math and concrete are one side of your brain, and things that are more creative and open-ended are this other side of your brain. And I've always found that to be, and usually people lean one way or the other. And I've always felt that I was like extreme in both ways at the same time, because most people that see me as director of operations or in kind of producer mode in life would never see that I had a really creative upbringing and background. And then people from the dance and theater world would have never guessed that I would be someone who loves spreadsheets. and so, we're kind of talking about these funny things that collide, and especially working in a business that does need to blend creative and business. We're talking about things like, analyzing postmortem data versus like open-ended exploration without a goal in mind. We're talking about like capitalism versus art and like these like really big things. And we have the perfect guest to join us today to talk about these things and how they can actually complement each other and enhance each other, and how there are some people, I think, including Paul, maybe myself too, that can kind of negotiate how these different worlds and how these different people work. And we're going to talk about a lot of fun things there. So, Douglas.
A little foreshadowing there.
A little foreshadowing.
You gave his name.
I did? Gosh,
ladies and gentlemen, the guest today is Paul, as Carrie said, Paul Pape, someone who is considered the Santa for nerds, and we'll get into that in a little bit. He is a TEDx speaker who's spent 20 years bridging the divide between traditional business thinking and creative entrepreneurship. Paul translates between two languages, helping creative minds access economic opportunity by reframing business concepts through gaming principles. I love it, rather than forcing them to think differently. I'm all about gaming principles.
For sure. Paul, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Doug and Carrie. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, first of all, what inspired you initially to do the work that you do? Why are you so passionate about sort of what you do between these two worlds of business and creative?
I have a very overactive imagination, and I always had as a kid. I think I spent like 3 years when I was younger thinking I was a gray elf from the world of Dungeons and Dragons that was kidnapped as a child and raised in this weird human family. And so I just had to kind of like find my way. And so I've always loved using my imagination. And my second passion is my mother loved Christmas, and I loved Christmas, but the art of gift giving has always been something that she instilled in me. And so I was always making things for people, giveaways or whatever. And what she taught me when I was younger was that observation is the best way to surprise somebody, is to just watch them, pay special attention, and then you can surprise them so easily just by, actually listening and observing things. And so that's really what kind of started me in this. And then I found theater in high school and undergrad and graduate school,
or theater found you.
Ooh,
theater.
Well, actually, yes, I'd say the second side of theater found me. I started out as an actor, and I'm not the best at memorizing lines, and so I'm the worst scene partner you'll ever have. but I love to be on stage. So I've done a few one-man shows because then I don't have to worry about that part of it. But when I was in undergraduate school, I had declared my major as an actor. And after about 2 months in, they said, you'll never be on our stages. And so you might as well just drop. And I was like, okay, well, I'm stubborn, so no. And I had a mentor, the chair of the department actually came down and said, how about would you like to learn everything? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so he taught me literally everything from janitorial to box office to management to directing and then design. And man, I just ran with design. I loved every bit of it because it kind of fit into the gift giving thing. So
Yeah, I mean, a gray elf growing up in a human world has got to be resilient. So
yeah,
I can see
absolutely, man.
why that stubbornness really came through. Were you a mage, a warrior, a
Always a
ranger? What were
ranger.
you?
Always a
Okay, all
ranger.
right.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
I feel so left out of this conversation.
Just nerds nerding. That's all good.
That's it. That's
Bring
it.
it on. Yeah. No, I love that you fell in love with design because that's the thing that I probably hated the most in getting a degree in theater, especially like miniature models. Kill me now.
That's my favorite part.
I know. And that's the thing is like, I knew so many people loved it. I was like, I don't have to love it. Other people love it so much. You do it. You know what I mean? Toothpicks, get out of here.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I'm just behind the curtain over there. I have my Warhammer army of dwarves that I still need to finish painting. But yeah, we could talk about this all day, I think, Paul and I.
Probably.
Paul, fast forward then to how you figured out that creatives, there's an interpretation, or I should say a translation problem sometimes, which I'm thinking is like creatives that need to make money and have a business. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, that's pretty much the nail on the head there. So basically, what happened is I work in a basement studio, and I have, like I said, for 20 years I've worked in here. And my wife gave me the studio so that I would be home for my kids. So I'm a stay-at-home dad who actually does this full time. And I got lonely after a while. Kids started going to school, and I was sitting here by myself. And I love the theater, the live action aspect of it. And so I had Googled one day how to talk to people live while doing my work, and it introduced me to a platform called Twitch. And if I kid you not, for 2 years I thought Twitch was just a bunch of creatives on there doing their stuff. I didn't know it was for gamers because I'm oblivious. I just kind of stayed in my lane, and I was thriving. I did really, really well on Twitch. And what happened is a lot of other creatives found me and then saw that I was a professional artist, creative, working with pretty big names and doing all this work consistently. And so they started asking a lot of questions. And what I found is I did that for 6 years, about 5 days a week, 4 to 6 hours a day for 6 years. And what I found is that they asked the same questions over and over again. And what I realized is that all of these people have the training or the experience of being creative. They're really good masters of their craft, but the problem was that they didn't know how to translate that into being a business. And so here I was being a business and doing really well at it. And so I was like, well, why don't I start giving you some tips? And so, throughout those 6 years, I would be like, okay, well, here's how you figure out how to charge. And here's, like how to do taxes for the independent contractor. You want to talk about being a person who loves spreadsheets. I'm a huge tax nerd.
Oh my gosh. See? Yes, I can see how you were immediately popular with people because that's one of the scariest things to deal with as a small business or entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love it. I've been audited 3 times and they hate me. I always get money back. I
Gross.
love it.
Ew.
I love it.
Oh, you've been audited 3 times. So, oh my God, 3 times? You're terrifying me.
Words that have never been spoken in succession. I've been audited 3 times, and I love it.
Well, the thing was I found out the first time I got audited is because I went for graduate school where I was making $19,000 a year because you're a poor college student, and then I had a product idea which, believe it or not, was about model furniture for scale models, and I went and hit like $250,000 the next year. And so of course the government is like, you're selling drugs. So like, we've got to edit. We're going to audit you here. So where is that money coming from? And so I sat down, but the thing of it was I'm so curious. I love to learn. And so I was asking so many questions. She's like, can I just do my job? I'll give you our training DVDs. And they gave me a stack of DVDs and said, you can just learn everything about this. I'm like, sweet, let's do it. And so I started like really digging into it. So like I could nerd out on taxes as much as any other gaming thing I could talk about. I love that. But what that showed me was that there's like I have this love of business, but there's a lot of creatives out there who have the skills and the talent, but they don't have any idea how to do it. And I was actually working with client, they had hired me because they were earning seven figures in their business. They've been in business for about 13 years, but they were grossing about they were netting about $50,000. They were grossing over $1 million, gross netting about 50,000. And so they brought me in. They're like, we need help. And so they brought me in, and they were huge nerds. One guy used to work for Blizzard, and the other one, they're making dragons as their business. So they're big nerdy people, which is great. And I was talking to them, and I'm like, well, what do you guys do in the business? What's your job? And they're like, well, we do everything. And I said, well, that's the best way to ruin your business right there, is to say that you do everything. So I said, tell me what you do specifically. And so they each told me their role. There's three of them. And I said, how about I come back tomorrow? And I was just kind of pulling things out of the air. I said, why don't we play, I don't know, Dungeons and Dragons Business Edition? And instead of playing like a rogue or a wizard, we're going to play your role in the business. And then the encounters that you find, the monsters that you run into, will actually be things in business that you'll encounter that you need to figure out. And so I came back the next day, and I was just winging it. I was improv, and we played for about 4 hours. And while I'm talking through all of this, and we're going through like business issues, I could see light bulbs going off, and their eyes were getting big. And at the end of it, the guy came up to me, and he goes, "Is this business?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, this is all it is." He's like, "I've been at this for 13 years. I don't think I've ever understood it as well as I do now." And then
Wow.
they actually turned that around. They're now making over $800,000 net, which is good. So we turned it around because it like really clicked for them. And I thought, well, if they come on to something here. And so that's really where gamified business came from. It came from the idea of being able to translate complex, unnecessarily complex ideas through business and turning it into something that we're all very familiar with, which is gaming. We all game. We can all level a character from 1 to 0 or 1 to 10, and then figure out how to get new equipment and how to spend your gold wisely and invest in the right things. And that's all business is. And so I use gamified business as a translation device, and then it makes business fun. It gets rid of that fear of business that a lot of creatives think. Creatives, I feel, are like cloud thinkers, is how I like to think of them, instead of linear thinkers. You talk about right brain, left brain, it's very much linear thinkers or cloud thinkers. And when you get a creative to start talking about business, you're trying to force that cloud into a line, and they just don't want to do it. And so this way allows them to kind of be all over the place and think of it more as an adventure as opposed to this thing this slog they have to go through.
Well, while you were talking, I was reminded of, I think, we're going to nerd out here, Carrie, so just brace yourself.
I'm ready. I'm bracing. Okay.
I was reminded of, I believe it was the TV show Stargate SG-1, and it started off the first season. They didn't know how to translate the symbols on the Stargate, and so they had turned it into a video game, and some kid, sank hundreds of hours into the video game, nerded out, and actually solved the riddle, and then he becomes a character on the show. But that's how they I think it was Stargate SG-1. That's how they cracked the code on the Stargate. So, I mean, obviously science fiction, but the idea is there, right? Like if you can gamify something in an effective way, it's like for me, I hate going to the gym, but I love playing soccer. So I can get my exercise by playing a game. Work this muscle by playing a game. I think that's fantastic.
Well, zombie running is a real thing. People hate to run, but they put in their headphones and they've got zombie running. So as you're running and listening to your music, zombies will appear behind you, and the closer they get, the louder they are, and it makes you run faster to get away from the zombies, and then they get quiet again. It's the exact same thing.
I didn't know about this. I hadn't heard of zombie running.
Are you going to try it?
I might have to try it.
I think you should try it.
I might have to try it.
It's funny because as you're running, you're just jogging. You're doing your normal look, and then all of a sudden we're all like, trying our best to get away from the zombies. It's so funny to watch anybody else doing it because zombies coming for you because they look so ridiculous.
Yeah. No, usually I'm on the treadmill or something and I'll be jamming out, so like I can kind of dance a little bit while I'm running, but I can totally imagine people running scared from the mock zombies behind them. That's amazing.
I always thought if you could get VR to show me Azeroth so I can run through Azeroth, which is a World of Warcraft world that you're in, or some fantasy world. It could be Lord of the Rings. It could be any Harry Potter world, whatever. If I could jog through that instead of staring at a tiny screen showing me boring television programs or other people working out, I'd be more apt to do it.
Totally.
Just because I'm invested in that world. But speaking of the dopamine stuff, that's actually 100% accurate. And that's the great thing about it. My kid today was talking about he does Geometry Dash, which is a competitive geometry game in middle school. And it's who can get the highest score. And the highest score is by solving math problems, geometry problems, but you're doing it by playing it's almost like a Super Mario type of game. And they're solving geometry by figuring out how to jump and how to climb and all this stuff. And it's competitive within the class. And they're all super, and they come back and they're all talking about who got the high score today and all this. And you're learning geometry. You know, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And that immediately puts it into the application of the adult world, which we, you know, a lot of people complain about math that way. They're like, unless you're going to be an engineer. But actually, you know, I use mostly simple, but all the time kind of like crunching basic numbers. And I use math in basic ways all the time. And the application of how do I do this, you know, especially in spreadsheet land, it's like you can look up a formula, but you still have to know the logic of what you're doing and why you're doing it in order to apply the formulas and stuff. I love that it applies things immediately when they have a problem to solve and they need math to solve that problem. And it's also a little different than a word problem, which, you know, those get a little tired.
Yeah. Well, that's using, you know, yet another like hard skill, for lack of a better phrase, you know, like reading comprehension and things like that. But if you can gamify something, you can just make it so much easier, because a lot of these, especially in the business world, they're non-intuitive ideas, right? Like something like compound interest. It's not intuitive that if I instead of getting $2 billion today, if you just got $1 today and then doubled it every day, you know, you would break the world economy in like, I don't know, a month or something, like whatever it is. See, it's not intuitive. I have no idea how long it would take, but it would happen.
Yeah. Gosh, the different brains thing, you know, thinking about solving math problems. My mom has been in special ed for a long time, and she's constantly reminding me of how brains work differently in strengths and weaknesses, kind of like thinking of every skill set our brain can do on a spectrum, and how some people are just further along on spectrum. And we say like autism spectrum, really that's a continuation of a normal spectrum, and we're just talking about kind of the far end of it. Mm-hmm. And so she'll say things like, well, remember, it's not like they're on a separate spectrum, they're on the same one, they're just a little further down. So it's like you but further down, you know. She'll say things like that. And listening to you talk, Paul, it makes me think about the issues I've seen and had to deal with in the workplace, where people are operating on really different areas of the spectrum in different ways. And you know that they can complement each other, but sometimes folks are not super open-minded about understanding how someone else's brain works. And it causes some friction in workplaces sometimes, because personalities will be different, yes, but also they have trouble seeing the strengths that other person brings. All they can see is, oh, they're so different and they act this way, and they can't really see the strengths that someone brings. And I wonder if you run into that, especially with maybe creatives that are lacking in certain skills that they need to like pump up a little bit or learn about or something like that.
Absolutely. Run into it all the time. And the way that I cover it in two different ways in the books. One, all of my books and when I do workshops and stuff, it's actually created for people who are neuro-spicy. My son is neuro-spicy. And so
I have heard this term before. I love that.
Can you explain what neuro-spicy?
Yeah, talk to us about neuro-spicy.
So neuro-spicy it's self-coined. People who are on the neurodivergent spectrum, they don't like to be called neurodivergent because it has so many connotations to it. Mm-hmm. And so they say they're neuro-spicy instead, because it's all just a little bit of extra flavor that they've put onto how they approach the world. And so they call themselves neuro-spicy, which I think is good. And so all of my programming is actually geared for that. So I, much like talking about Geometry Dash or zombie running or whatever, it's changing things up a little bit within your course of action so that they aren't always having to do the same thing. It's not always word problems. It's not always, you know, whatever we have to do. We mix it up. And so the other thing that I do is we do character sheets, and that's kind of blends into this. One of the things that I've recognized and realized working with a lot of people is that typically, one, the quietest person always has the best ideas, but they don't ever want to like speak up. And so we do character sheets, which basically, it's kind of like a Myers-Briggs. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's kind of like assigns who you are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I do it in a different way. It's a lot like that. It's a personality test, but then it assigns you a class within the world of Dungeons and Dragons. So you're the warrior, you're the ranger, you're the mage, whatever. But then, much like the client that I had, we allowed that person to spearhead their expertise. And so even the quiet person has the opportunity to like say their part to be able to lead, and everyone else then recognizes they have to take the step back. They become the supplemental people in that one. And what that does is it allows people to look past the neuro-spicy part, the part that makes them different, and actually see them for the strengths that they carry. And I've yet to meet a neuro-spicy person that doesn't have a strength that surpasses the common folk or the average person.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I love. And so we bring that to the forefront. And what I frame it as, we're all wizards or we're all magical people. And this is just the magic that you bring. You know, not everybody can cast a healing spell. Some people need to do fireballs, you know, and so that's where this all comes into it. And so knowing what your strength is. Exactly. So so that's really how I approach it. And absolutely we see it. But what I find is that then those strengths become the thing that people see. And so instead of being like, hey Doug, you're always so quiet and you're always typing when you keep your head down, you don't like my eye contact. It's more like, hey Doug, I know that you've got a really great attention to detail, and this problem needs some attention to detail that none of us are figuring out. And that person can come in and be just like, this is what you need to do. And it gives them ownership of their position, and then allows them to feel like they're really contributing to the party or the company that they work in.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm really obsessed with people and teams. I've led really large groups of people, and I believe that changes you as a person, because you really start to see how someone contributes to a group or a team versus judging them as an individual so harshly all the time. And Douglas here, Mr. Historian, he loves to remind me, he's like, well, that's why Lincoln was so successful, because he knew how to bring together a team that didn't know how to get along, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, he talks about the greatest leaders. And it sounds like you're mostly working with, you know, almost like consulting sort of individuals and stuff, but it has a lot of application in even a larger team sense. Has that ever come into your work, dealing with larger groups or anything?
Oh yeah, we do group stuff all the time, and what I love about it is the first thing we do is the character sheet, which is an introspection thing. And a little secret here, if you don't know who you are, you're going to have a really hard time figuring out how to work with anybody else. And so we do the introspection thing first, and then after that we do looking for group, which is why the tavern thing here, because that tavern is where you go to find your group. And the great thing about it is the little assignment of who you are, like your Myers-Briggs aspect of it, your character sheet. It says, oh, I'm a warrior, and my perfect counterpoint would be a ranger. And so I need to go out and find a ranger. And so we do this looking for group, and everybody's walking around. They're like, oh, I'm a warrior. I'm looking for some rangers. Anybody here a ranger? Oh, you're a ranger. What's your specialty? And it helps to bring everybody together, because now we've got all these people like mingling and talking who they wouldn't necessarily talk to before, because now they're looking for something specific. And then what we do is we build up these parties. And so in a large group of 50 people, we can take those and we make small groups of 5. And then those 5 people become the group, and then we campaign around that. And so everybody does the same campaign, but how the groups attack the problem are all going to be different because of the makeup of their group. So yeah, it works great with small and large groups.
Do you find that the shy, the more introverted people, that it helps them come out of their shell to be these characters, so that they don't have to be themselves necessarily?
It's not even just the shy people. Entrepreneurs, I don't know if you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, but they are flawless individuals. They have 0 flaws whatsoever. This is all sarcasm. They're absolutely flawed. But if you ask them what their flaws are, they'll be like, I don't have no flaws, because they know if they show a chink in the armor that they're going to, it could possibly collapse. And so that's actually the beauty of the character sheet, is it disassociates you just far enough away from ego that it's not my faults. My character has these faults. And so what happens is the loud people and the quiet people are all leveled out, because they're like, oh my. And honestly, the quiet people are the ones who actually game and understand this, and so they'll get really into their characters. They'll have backgrounds and all this stuff. Yeah. But the loud people are like, they start to get a little into it, but they're uncomfortable because it's not something that they're very familiar with. And so it helps to level that playing ground, because then it's not all about me, it's about my character, even though your character is yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked a little bit about entrepreneur personality types.
Flawless
personalities. And I get what you're saying, because I think, they always say, actually, leadership and entrepreneurship can be very lonely, because you are the one cheerleading for yourself all the time. You're advocating for yourself all the time. Usually those in the beginning, your team's really small, or it's just yourself. And I'm curious if you find either in individuals or teams, you know, coming again from a creative background and then having to move into a realm of business where people are so freaking confident about things like financials, and sometimes they're really confident talking about and dealing with big amounts of money. And you know, the creative world, I really don't think that that's a comfortable thing for like super crunchy creatives to like talk about unless, you know, they're on a level that's like famous or whatever. Like the true artist groups that I was around all growing up, like you're doing it for love and passion and this other thing. You're creating for this other desire and purpose. And in the business world, there is a capitalist mentality of like, and a way that your business needs to be you know, healthy. Like you were saying, this couple that like had an unhealthy business, they might be as passionate as they can, but they need help making sure their numbers are there. And balancing those two things, I find with creatives, they can get really uncomfortable when you start to talk numbers and facts and say like, you need to be a little bit more money driven in order for this to work for your life. And does that ever come up with you?
Yeah, I apologize for rolling my eyes. I hate when people talk about like artists don't like to make money. I actually was on a podcast once and they said artists will never make money because they like being poor. And I'm like, I've never met a
That
person
is
who's poor.
definitely not the case. They want money. I think it's just an uncomfortable topic, right? Like,
Right. So I rolled my eyes and I'm like, no, don't. I'm not rolling my eyes at you. I was like, that
yeah.
statement just always brings me back. But what I find the best way for me to approach that is I am so brutally honest with my money and my approach to it that people are like, oh, he's just willing to like just put it out there. Because trust me, for 20 years you screw up a lot, and so I've lost a lot of money. I've made decent money, but money is just a thing. It's a thing, unfortunately, we all have to deal with. If we could go back to the barter system, then the artist would rule the world, but it's not the way it works. And so, yeah, I just talk about it, and it's about demystifying it. Money is unfortunately a necessary evil that we have to get into. But if we convert it into something that makes sense to them, the relatability of it is what kind of opens it up. And the other one is talking about self-worth. I think that's a really hard one for especially creatives to really grasp, is that you have so much more value than you perceive you do, because especially in the United States, we're always pushing the artists down, where the creatives are always being pushed down. The starving artist trope is a real thing. And what I try to tell people is that you're a wizard and you sell magical items. And with that reframe, just that simple bit of reframe, and then talking about money, I'm like, this is why this magic potion that you created is worth 700 gold pieces, because no one else can make this. And it's true with all creative ventures. And when they start to actually like grasp that, then they're like, oh, my value is much higher than I am. And then it gives them the confidence to be able to just say, this is my worth. The other one is that I talk to creatives about is figuring out how to figure out what to charge for your work. And I have a mathematical equation. And I love giving this to people. And I give it away for free. You can find it on my website.
Oh, yeah, let's get into it. This is juicy.
So with math, it's the best. I do a lot of trade shows. I've done a lot of Artist Alley, that kind of thing. And I'll have people come up and they love to haggle. Customers will haggle with artists all the time. And so they're like, oh, how much is this? $650. Ooh, you know, would you take 200? I'm like, no, I'll take 650. And they're like, well, why is it 650 if my kid can do the same thing? I'm like, well, let me show you the math. And I break down the math for them. And once you show somebody hard figures like that, it's like going into a business saying, well, this is the cost. Yeah. And I've never had a customer be like, I'm going to disagree with your math, because the numbers don't lie. And it's almost like a shield that any creative can wear, is like, I've got now math power, so I can tell you that this is why it costs what it costs. And then the only wiggle room that they have is in your hourly rate. And I teach people very specifically how to figure out what your hourly rate is. But then if you've ever tried to look somebody in the eye and tell someone that they're worth less, it's very difficult for them to be like, yeah, I don't think you're worth that. And I'm like, no one's ever said that to me, you know. And then if I do get somebody who's really belligerent, what I tell them is I tell them the exact same thing. How can I come into your work and then tell your boss to only pay you half what you normally earn this week because I feel that that's what you're worth this week? And you're like, well, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, that's what you're doing to me. Just because I work for me doesn't mean that, you know, my value switching, like my hourly rate doesn't jump around. No, my hourly rate is what it is, and you either want it or you don't. And I think understanding that, and then also telling creatives that sometimes a person is not their client, to be able to walk away from the client, be like, oh, that it's not for you. Okay, well, you're just not my client. That's okay, and I'll find my next client, and you can just keep moving them on, and that's okay. And I think, because don't get me wrong, the starving artist trope is a real thing, and for 15, 16 years, I thought if I didn't take every single job that came across my desk, I would never work again, because it's that feast or famine thing, especially with gig work. And so I was taking jobs I should not have been taking. As a matter of fact, I'm like, I'd love to say that I've grown out of this, but 2 weeks ago, I did a job, and I was just like, well, I might as well take it, whatever. I don't know what's going to happen next. And worst client experience I've had in years.
Oh, no.
But yeah, and so here I am, 50 years old, 20 plus years into this business, still making those mistakes because I feel like, I should know by now, but it still happens. But like, recognizing that that's a problem client, and that it shouldn't be my client, is something that we're all going to struggle with, but that you need to understand that not everybody's going to want your work, and
you're human. You're still allowed to make mistakes. You don't have to be a perfect entrepreneur just because you're 50, Paul. Come on.
I'm an entrepreneur, so I am perfect. I just want to let you know.
That's
I have
right.
no flaws.
Right. Yeah. That kind of brings me back to, like, you kind of sit on encouraging creatives to increase their sort of business savvy, right? And many times I am on the other side looking at business savvy people who really don't know how to work with creatives, because the creative process, which I feel very strongly about, has to have investment and wiggle room to explore and figure things out and mess up. And sometimes business savvy people are like, show me those numbers. Why isn't this working yet? It's been 30 days. Why don't we have results? Why don't you have the answer? Why don't you have the product? And that kind of pressure on the creative process, there are certain kinds of pressure that can be good, but expectations for something to come out of the creative process in a very specific way, I think gets businesses into trouble. And it's like, sometimes they accidentally find it early on and they're like, wow, we're so brilliant. But then as they get more and more corporate, and again, sort of like capitalist focused, and then they have investors and people that are all relying on the money to come in, that creative process gets deprioritized. And those creatives get sort of stifled over time. And I think that's actually a big problem with American business right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually talking to my wife today about that. She's a costume designer. She works for a theater. She's the head costume designer for this theater.
Woo!
And they keep cutting budgets because, we're in a time where budgets are tight. They have a bunch of, we call them bean counters. That's the people on the top floor that run the business aspect of things. They're all making six figures. The artists are not, but and then they cut budgets. The first thing that they cut is the art. And there's such a disconnect between the money making and the creative side that they don't realize that they're cutting off their own feet, because you can't do the art if you can't take away all the money. And so my wife and I were literally having this conversation today. It's like, the business aspect has to understand the creative side, whether it's a creative business or a regular business where you're creating a product. That creativity needs that wiggle room. It needs that room to breathe, because innovation shows up there. And when you start kneecapping the creative aspect of it, your business is not going to be sustainable.
Yeah. And we're seeing that in the medical world too. They used to allow people to do a lot of sort of free exploration, and they would find cures and wonderful things on accident from things they weren't even looking for all the time. I mean, and they, what's that stuff growing there? Oh, it cures this. How wonderful. And now we're so focused and grant driven that it's good because we work towards a cause, and that's wonderful. But even in the medical world, they're a lot less creative in many ways, and they're not given a whole lot of room to go outside their exact grant specifications. And it's probably not for the better.
Yeah, no, I mean it's totally driven by the source of the money. What's funding it, who's paying for it, that sort of thing. And what you're talking about, the bean counters making a ton of money, we're dealing with the same sort of wage disparities, shall we say, even in academia. That's starting to be run more and more like a corporation. And of course, where do the cuts come from, or the price hikes? Tuition. It's always from the bottom up. Seems like
bottom up, which we just, I mean, thanks Reagan, but trickle down economics has never been successful. It's never going to work. But we still just we hang on to that one with fists. It's like, no, it's if honestly, if you raise the bottom, then everyone profits. But
Yep.
I mean, that's a different podcast altogether. But
Totally.
Yeah, no, but I love talking about it because I feel like small businesses generally do care so much about their people because it's a small team, it's your family, you're there with them every day, you have to look them in the eye every day. As soon as your organization gets big enough and you're really disconnected from the connection to your people, it's easier to disconnect their well-being as well. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that, like I always say, yeah, I went to business school and I there are aspects of me, Doug makes fun of me all the time because I tend to think about the hardships that leaders go through in trying to make decisions because I've been there and I know how tough it is and how judgmental people get about decisions. But I also am really hard on leaders that are not fair to their company, to their workers, who aren't constantly striving to make their lives better, to give them raises, to see what they can do while maintaining the health of the business to make their company feel like a prosperous, wonderful company. That should be the American dream to me if you own a business. It's not to make $5 million when you sell. That's fine too. But if everyone hates you at the end of the day, on your deathbed, are you going to be like, I'm so glad everyone hates me and I had that $5 million that year? Like,
I can't
no.
wait to get into that giant crypt I bought for myself. The giant
Right.
mausoleum.
Yeah, and you know, the sort of like heaven trope of like, so what were your accomplishments in life? They'd be like, $5 million in the sale. Wait a second, that's not what I'm supposed to do. Oh shoot.
I can't remember what it was. There was like a cartoon where Steve Jobs went to heaven and found out he was going to be reincarnated as one of his employees, and he ends up in like a sweatshop somewhere or something. You know, it's
It's
like,
not technically his employee, but I get it.
yeah, you know what I mean.
what I found interesting was during the pandemic, we actually saw what happens when people care about their business and their
Yeah.
employees. They thrived. And we kept hearing, nobody wants to work, nobody wants to do this. It's because we weren't paying living wages. The companies that paid a living wage, that they actually cared about their business, that even though they had a downturn in business, the people who were making the most money gave up their salaries so that they could help the employees stay sustainable. They thrived. And I mean, it's a great example of what we're talking about here. It's like if you make everyone else feel like they're a part of this family, that you actually care about the people that you employ, then your business will be more successful. You may not get your $5 million payout, but you'll affect more lives. You will sell more product. You'll reach more people that way.
Yeah, and I really feel like the service to others is what fulfills people at the end of the day. Again, it's not that we want you to be broke. That's such a dumb trade-off. That's not what I'm saying. But like the idea that as a business owner you are in service to others, I feel like is just a really sad idea. And you know what? It is hard to do nowadays. I will say, especially in California, people talk a lot about how difficult it is to do certain things. Like we're trying really hard to figure out how to give health benefits and do that kind of stuff and still be financially healthy. But you know what? We're going to get creative about it and we're going to come up with ideas and we're going to talk to our people and have this like open dialogue about it and do the best we can. And I feel like that sort of like less conventional thinking, sort of more creative thinking by people who like, okay, well, the system works this way, but like, how can I make it work so that I'm, retaining my values? Stuff like that can really like change a workplace.
Yeah, I love that rules because we always say that you're thinking inside the box, or let's think outside the box. And I'm like, who created the box? I mean, box sounds so rigid. To me, I like to tell people rules are more like a deflated balloon that you found yourself inside. The rules are still there. You just got to push and pull until it starts to fit you. You're not breaking the rules. You're not breaking out of this box. You're just making it contour to you as a human because we're all different. We're not cogs in a machine. We are not machines ourselves. We're people. And so being able to fit those rules around us is infinitely going to benefit you better than trying to make everybody conform to this really tight set of standards that was laid down 50 years ago by somebody who figured out how to work for them at that moment.
Yeah. Your whole business model is unconventional. And I from the, little research that I've done and the short conversations we had, I know that you're an unconventional thinker and you even have stories of how kind of unconventional thinking saved the day. I wonder if you might share one of those with us.
Yeah, so I was actually, we had talked about this. So I was hired by Nickelodeon. They were doing a reboot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the 80s. They rebooted it in the
I'm
2020s.
April, you guys. This is where I get to nerd out. I'm April.
Oh, nice. All right, cool.
I'm wearing the jumpsuit.
I'm Donatello.
I'm wearing the yellow jumpsuit.
So they had contacted me and they were going to give away Xboxes. And they're like, we want to do this just nice giveaway, but we need some Xboxes that are themed out. So all of the really creative people that were at the studio were like, what if we put a sticker of the turtles on top of these Xboxes? And they're like, okay, cool. So they reached out to me and they're like, Paul, would you be able to make these stickers? And I'm like, well, do you actually want to sell these or give them away? Because if so, let me give you some other ideas. And so I pitched them 15 different ideas. And all of them were three-dimensional. So instead of stickers, I was building... we actually built the whole Ninja Turtle van that had the Xbox as part of the roof, but you could you play with your action figures inside of it. We built the miniature arcade from the 80s, so that played TMNT. You could play TMNT with your Xbox controller, the arcade, but then it was a fully functional Xbox inside of it. My favorite was the Eastman box, which I took the original. So Kevin Eastman was the original artist for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it was black and white. And so each side of the Xbox was actually a three-dimensional relief of panels from the original comic books. And so it's this beautiful piece of art. And what happened was that presenting these pieces this way, it was, even though it was a giveaway, people were entering into the sweepstakes, which we all know getting names and information is the most valuable position that we can get when we're advertising. They saw a 400% increase in people entering than when they had originally launched it with it was just a sticker.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw my face when you said that. I was like, sticker? Like,
well, because the Xbox has this like speaker on the side of it, and they're like, that's a manhole, so we'll just have them like crawling out of the manhole, and I'm like, that's okay.
All right, yeah, that's neat.
And then Paul brings like the big ideas, and they're like, oh my God, we were going so low. Our bar was so low.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is because they're like, we like this idea and we're going to slap another idea onto it and we're just going to kind of blend the two together. But if you're not a creative out of the box thinker, which is, I call myself a creative problem solver because that's really what I do. And I spend my entire career, people come up and it's like, I got an idea, but I don't know how to flesh it out. Can you figure it out? Yeah, that's what I do. And so when they bring me in, I'm like, as long as you're open to it. And what was funny is because I'm working for Nickelodeon, but I'm working with the entire team of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So they had a team of 30 artists working on the new show. And every day I would come back and one of them had a new great idea. And they're like, ooh, what if we did this? Is this even possible? I'm like, yeah, we'll sketch it out. We'll render it and we'll take a look at it. And like, they got so excited about working on this giveaway because it was promoting this thing that they're passionate about, working on this new show, this reboot from something from their youth. And then it just kind of got everyone's creative juices flowing. And what I found was really fun with it was that the uppers, the bean counters, they kind of took a step back. And they're like, the nerds have this. Let them do it. And they just kind of let them run.
Cook.
Yeah, let them cook. What an amazing story. All right, well.
Wait. I promised at the top. I promised at the top that we would explain the Santa for Nerds.
Oh yes, Santa for Nerds.
So we need to rewind a little bit.
Okay,
here.
fine.
And please, Paul, Santa,
yes. Santa Polly.
Yes, Santa Polly. Okay, so Santa for Nerds is my nickname. I did not give it to myself. I want to clarify that. It was actually a client that did. I was working on something. They had this ridiculous idea. I do a lot of proposal ring boxes back in the day, so really nerdy proposals. And so everything from Harry Potter to Star Wars to you name it, I've probably done it. And they had this really wacky idea that they wanted to do that was all these things that they as a couple really were passionate about, and it's how they met and they do these things all the time. So like, can you make this thing that doesn't exist? And I'm like, yeah. And they had like thrown out this litany of ideas, and they're like, you're so much like just Santa for Nerds. And I'm like, thank you, because for years I've been trying everything else on my business card, because trying to explain I can make anything is really difficult on a business card. And so to say you're Santa for Nerds, I'm like, everyone knows what a Santa is. Everyone knows what a nerd is. You put those things together and they're like, what is that? And then it gives me the opportunity to explain it in depth. And it's actually the name of my TEDx talk is Santa for Nerds, where I actually did an artist presentation and I showed everybody the process and the stories behind it. Because I'm a huge proponent of the story, the human story behind everything that I make, because that's really what it's about. My wife says that I make memories tangible, and I think that's an important distinction that I make with it. So that's where Santa for Nerds comes from.
That story is so much better than you thought it was, isn't it?
No, it's just great. I knew it was going to be good. I just didn't know how good it was going to be.
It was so good. That's a really good backstory. All right. So, Paul, if you could leave our listeners with any big idea or call to action, if the most important thing you could leave our listeners with today, what would it be? And please share anything you have upcoming or anywhere you can point listeners to learn more about you and your work.
Well, I'm going to throw you back into the world of Gamify here. I love to tell people that business and life is an adventure. Don't be an NPC. Don't be a non-playable character. Be the hero of your own adventure. Don't sit on the sidelines and let life pass you by. Grab your sword and your shield. Go out there and explore and have fun.
Or your bow and arrow.
That's right. Whatever you want to do. As a ranger, it's bow and arrow. But absolutely. And so I think that's the most important thing that I could leave your audience, is that you should be adventuring through your own life. It doesn't have to be an epic sweep. It can be small things, but be the hero of your own adventure. I think it's the best thing. So where to find me? GamifyBusiness.com is the best place to find this. You can find my books there, The Creative Player's Handbook, as well as The Game Master's Guide. The Creative Player's Handbook is excellent because it walks you through the creation of your character sheet as well as looking for group. If you go through this book, you actually end up with a 90-day plan of action that allows you to make real-world money doing the thing that you love to do in a fun way. So that's probably the best way to do that. I also have a new book that's coming out, and I don't know if I can swear on this, so I'm gonna
You absolutely can.
word doesn't swear. Okay, cool. It's called Quit Selling Your Shit. and what it is why product first selling is destroying your creative business. Quit selling your thing. Sell the person behind it. Especially as a creative, you are more valuable than anything you produce. When a person's walking down the red carpet, they never say, "Hey, what are you wearing?" Pants. They say, "Who are you wearing?"
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's like, so sell yourself, don't sell the product, because once you start doing that, your value increases tenfold. So that's my new book, and that's available on Amazon for pre-order. It comes out March 26th, I believe. So it's available for pre-order. Quit Selling Your Shit by Paul Pape. So there you go.
Love it.
Paul, start selling your shit, though, because we want you to succeed. By the way, fun fact, did you know Pape is the past tense of Pope? No, I'm just kidding.
Both, but you got both of us on that one. I was like, what kind of research did you do that I didn't do? Paul, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for being on. It's been such a pleasure. This went so much nerdier than Doug's imagination could have ever dreamed. And he's so thrilled about it. I'm going to hear about you. He's going to buy your books. He's got a whole tunnel to go down now. And then I feel like I do have a lot of, we both have sort of like great nerd friend groups and family members that go deep into those worlds. And I really think your stuff is going to be really cool for some of these people to try and figure out how they could gamify their creative passions into maybe something that's more of a legit business model. So I'm excited to share it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Good. Well, we'll talk again soon. Have a good one. Thanks, Paul.
Bye, Paul.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of People Fuss. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and of course, fuss around in the comment section on YouTube.
People Fuss is a tight-knit production written and produced by yours truly, Carrie Prince.
And Doug Daniels.
If you want to support conversations that create connection and promote progressive and human-centered stories, visit patreon.com/peoplefuss and become one of our monthly supporters. Or you could even just throw us a one-time donation.
Or you could throw us a 10-time donation. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as our cats enjoyed annoying us from behind that closed door.
Such whiners. All right. Until the next one.
Bye.
Bye.